Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight it is whiplash on Wall Street, going from a record high 24 hours ago to its worst day in almost a year tonight. Look at this. The Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, all in the red. You see it on screen there. Why? New numbers showing us inflation may be more stubborn than we thought. That has investors worried that the Fed's not going to be able to cut rates many more times this year because we're seeing inflation go down a bit, but not quickly enough. At 3.1%, it's less than what it was in December, but it's really not where the expectation was, where people had wanted it to be. How's it affecting your wallet? Well, take a look at the numbers here. The essentials are still right around the same price they were last year. Eggs, bread, pretty much the same. Gas is down a little bit, same with milk, but just by a few cents. Brian Chung is joining us now. What is up with this roller coaster ride, Brian? We know that the markets, right, is not the economy. At the same time, I mean, this is, I think it's tough for people at home to maybe keep track of here. It's tough for people in the studios to keep track of. Walk us through it.
Yeah, well, stubborn was one way to describe it. Frustrating was what another analyst had used to describe this report. But again, let's take that 3.1% figure that you mentioned and put it into context. So, yes, that is an improvement from the 9.1% we saw in the summer of 2022. And look at that momentum that we had into the middle of last year. And then basically since then, we've essentially been going sideways. So, yeah, 3.4% was the last figure that we had seen in December. 3.1% is an improvement, but we really want to see this somewhere closer to 2%. And what accounted for a lot of the inflation in this particular report was shelter, which was the cost of just putting a roof over your head, rents, and also mortgages, but it was also food. Food prices continued to go up on a monthly basis, and even when you unpack that, where was it getting more expensive, at the restaurant or at home? Well, the answer was both. So when you look at full-service restaurants, for example, prices went up by 4.3% just between January of this year and January of last year. At limited service food spots, like let's say, for example, you just go to a takeout window, you grab the burger, those prices went up by 5.8%. So you're not really getting a lot of reprieve when it comes to food. And I think that explains some of the sentimental reasons why people are saying, all right, well, I see the numbers here, but I might not be feeling that in my pocket yet. Although important to note, Hallie, that more recent readings of consumer sentiment have been on the uptick recently.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it seems like some of that pessimism is starting to fade away a little bit. But as you look at these numbers here for the things, eggs, bread, milk, as we showed people, it doesn't feel like there's much of an impact in our wallets, right? The Fed wants to see inflation down even further. Talk us through what this looks like over the months to come.
Yeah, well, I mean, and for that, we need to provide a little bit of retrospective on what they've been doing over the last 2 years. And what they've been doing is going on a long high hike up to the mountains, right, if you will. So that's because as inflation was rising, they were saying, OK, how do we take steam out of this economy? Well, we can do it by raising borrowing costs. So in 2022, not only were they raising interest rates, they were doing it by large magnitudes, 3/4 of a percentage point at a time. They were tapering off, and then they ultimately stopped raising interest rates around the end of the summer last year. They haven't raised interest rates since then, which has had conversations of, OK, well, as we saw that improvement in inflation, would they then start to cut interest rates? Maybe that's the next step. Yeah, they've been pausing. Maybe in, let's say, for example, the March or May meeting, they could cut interest rates. Well, this report shows you that they still have a little bit of work to do to get down to that 2% level, which is right here, which is what they want to see. So for that reason, maybe they don't do that interest rate cut that people were expecting until June or perhaps July is what some analysts were saying today. Either way, that's going to be unwelcome news to Americans who are hoping maybe they could get into the mortgage market and maybe they would not have to suffer from these high credit card rates, which, by the way, is related to what the Federal Reserve has done over the last 2 years.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.